Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of VFX CG Spectrum Live. I never know how to say that properly. Hope your weekend has been good, or is still good if it's Sunday for you today. Monday morning here for me. It's a beautiful day outside here in sunny Melbourne, Australia. My name's Daniel Hourigan. I'm the head of FX and VFX at cgspectrum.com, and I'm going to keep going today with part 3 of my pirate ship breakdown, which is working with assets by KitBash. And they've kindly provided me with a Treasure Island pack, and I chose the pirate ship out of that to work with. So if you haven't seen those other live streams, there's another 2 in our channel if you want to have a look. Go back and have a look at those. Today I'm going to keep going with the simulation and looking at the cloth stuff, which we started looking at last week, and also maybe trying to add water. Hey Ivan, hey Alexi, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. So yeah, I'm gonna just jump into it. Let's let me know if there's any audio issues. You know, as usual, there's always something that tends to pop up. So I'm caching this out at the moment. It's taking a bit longer than what I thought, and it led me to a good thing that I can show you guys. When you're caching stuff out like this, I mean, you could open another Houdini and read in the files to have a look at where you were kind of up to. Audio is okay, great, thanks Ivan. Hey Rizwan, how's it going? So yeah, you could open another Houdini, even open the same file in another Houdini and just check where it's up to in the cache, and even have a look at your cache and see how it's going. But you may not realize, but there is this geometry viewer in Houdini. So if you have a look, if you go to, I'm in Windows and I can't show you my Windows search bar, but if I go into my search bar in Windows and type geometry, I can see geometry viewer. So it comes up for every version that I have. I have geometry viewer version 19.0 here. I click on that and it opens this, Gplay. It's like mplay but for geometry. And I can actually load in the cache. So if I go and find it, it's this one here, being here somewhere, Boats in V2, this is the one I'm currently writing out. See, it's quite heavy, 8 gig. And here it is. Look at this. And I can play it, and it will actually play my simulation, and there you go, that's what I'm caching out. So it's actually quite handy for seeing what your geometry is looking like, even just looking at caches. If you just didn't even want to open up Houdini to look at caches, using Gplay to actually see what a cache might look like, maybe before you delete it, it might be worthwhile just checking it out in Gplay to see what it's like. Hey Michael, how's it going? Rizwan, yes, I did see your video. It was good. I think you definitely need to work on your quality, but I like your storytelling ability through your videos. Hey Michael, how are you doing? How's your weekend going? What's the weather like there in Chicago at the moment? So as you can see, it's hard to tell where the water level is here, and I don't know. Maybe I don't know if you can turn on. Let's have a look through a different perspective. Maybe you might be able to figure it out. I mean, I'm assuming that this is kind of the water level here. So, maybe not actually. Raining and 30s. Sucks. Yeah, thanks. It's very sunny and warm here. I don't know why I'm wearing a hat inside. Probably because I'm bald. But it's getting very nice here. Yeah, December in Melbourne can be a little bit hit and miss. It can be very rainy sometimes. But yeah, it's starting to get quite nice and warm now, to the point where it gets quite hot. So yeah, anyway, I thought this would be a good thing to show you guys because it's it's kind of cool and I find it useful. I'm a little bit concerned here about my simulation because it almost looks like it's sort of going above the water level, which will be bad if I want to kind of do a kind of a flip sim with this, using this simulation as a collider. But maybe it'll be alright. Let's see, what can I do? What I'm going to do, actually, is open, because I kind of want this to keep going, let it finish off. It's only got 13 frames to go. I'm going to open up this file in another Houdini, as I think I did the other week as well. And I'm going to work in this one, because I actually didn't change anything in the file. I just kicked it off as soon as I opened it. Kicked it off means write it to disk, for anyone that doesn't know what that means. So yeah, let's see. Alright. Sounds like the music's kind of rainy too. It takes a little while, because I haven't cached these to disk, it takes a little while for when you first open this file, when I first open this file, you can see down the bottom, it's always a good idea to check what's happening down the bottom here. You can see it's running through Vorticity fracture and just kind of, it's refracturing everything. But if you cache that to disk, then you wouldn't have to do that. So it's always a good idea to cache really heavy things to disk. I just don't in the live context, and I didn't go back and, I didn't go back and change it. But I should put a file cache in there so that I don't have to do that every time. Yeah, while that's happening, next week's the last stream of the year for a few weeks. I'll be off the following week for a couple of weeks. I'm not sure when I'll start up again, but any ideas for next week? Some sort of fantastic final stream for the year. I don't know what it will be. Could be Christmas themed if you're so inclined, or it could just be something crazy. Let's live a little and go crazy in Houdini. Why not? So if you have any ideas, feel free to suggest them. I have a big list of stuff, the people have given me over the year, so I could just pick something from that. But, it's hard to do really big projects in 2 hours, so maybe just something small and fun. Whirlpool. That sounds hard, Ivan. Could be cool though. Yeah, definitely could be cool. We could see. Flip is hard. I mean, I'm gonna try and do flip today, but it's hard to, it's hard to do flip on the streams because it just is so time consuming. Alright, so this is the other file. I'm just gonna do this. This is all I did in the other one that's still running. I just did this and wrote it to disk, so we can have a look and see what it's like in this context. Okay, so yeah, it kind of looks okay. It looks like it's sitting on the ground. I think one thing that happens with the geometry viewer, this guy, I think the frame kind of resets every frame, so it makes it look a bit weird, or maybe the orientation is off. So just trying to throw me curveballs, hey, trying to stump me. Let's have a look at this. So it looks okay. I mean, I was kind of hoping that maybe a little more of the boat would be sort of floating. And you'll notice that from last week, it was sort of really... I had a look at the stream from last week, just before, to see what it was at. I spent a little bit of time after the stream last week just making the glue stronger and some of the constraints a little stronger so that the boat kind of didn't shatter into a million pieces. But what that means is that, yeah, it just sort of holds together a little more. Hey, that's good, Rizwan. I'm glad they liked it. So let's see, what could we do? We could keep going with this. Man, it's getting so big, this scene. This is what we were left off last week. I moved all this stuff over. So this is our Vellum setup. Let's have a look at that. Let's see what that looks like with our current simulation. A little bit crazy. Split. Ghosts? It's a good idea. What sort of thing with ghosts do you think? What sort of comes to mind when you think about that, Ivan? Let's see. So, what am I doing with this blast here? Oh, I'm getting rid of the little tiny flags. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Could try and find some animation to use. Do some kind of ghost-like things. See what we kind of come up with. Why is this not working? Reset. There we go. It looks like whatever I've done here with my manual selection has not worked. So I can't really remember what I was doing there. But maybe we could just do that with the mast. It's always good to use procedural selection rather than, you know, face-based selection. As you can see, that's broken now. Alright, let's try this. This seems nearly finished. It's got 5 frames to go. Hopefully we can still get this one going as well. Let's see what happens. One thing that's a bit odd is this, you know, I'm seeing this offset here, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's try and see. Frame 1. Template that. Yeah, okay. Kind of looks okay, but it's also kind of not okay. So let's go back to frame 1. Let's make sure that this is frozen in space. It doesn't have a clock icon, but always, you know, I mean, you can always check this as well, time dependent no, so that should be frozen. The first frame looks like that. Yeah. I wonder why. So it looks okay there. But then, as it goes, it starts to disconnect. Dun, dun, dun. Why does it do that? Probably because maybe the radius. Let's see if that's why. There we go. So the radius at 0.1 is too small to capture, because that's a pretty thin area for, you know, for sort of capturing the information on this guy. You can see when I put that up, it brings it all much closer. So I guess the scene scale, you know, has something to do with that. Alright, so then we're splitting based on the sales group. Ghostbusters. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you know, I did work on the last Ghostbusters, so I could show you some of the stuff, you know, some of the sort of, I guess, yeah, the ghost type stuff that we did on that at Method. I'm wearing my Method t-shirt today. The ghost stuff that we did on that was sort of, okay, Rizwan, sure thing. The ghost stuff that we did on that was kind of like particle stuff, sort of volume stuff. The ghosts were kind of mostly sort of human characters, maybe with kind of skeleton faces, but then they had a lot of sort of particles sort of leaving their body and being floaty, and yeah, you know. So I think I can show you that sort of stuff. I have to, it's all animation driven, so, you know, I'd have to find some animation that worked in that context. But yeah, could be a good thing to look at. Wow, why is this... Just, yeah, I'm seeing this massive drift here. I don't know why. Oh, that's why. Because there's a time shift here. So, because I'm starting this sim at 175, I guess I did that just to test. This frame 1, you know, is frozen on the frame 1 position, but really I need to make these the same. So we'll see those snap into position. There we go. So that's better. Sort of better. Sort of not as well. It's not going so well. I guess that's maybe just down to the point to form again. Perhaps I'll just let it run from frame 1. Maybe that's the best option, and I'll just follow along. Sometimes you can get this error that bakes into your scene that just like never goes away, and you have to close Houdini and start again. Hopefully this will work, let's see. That other sim's finished, incidentally, so hopefully this will go through reasonably quick. It's a good thing about Vellum. I mean, this is pretty slow for Vellum, but it is, you know, it is a relatively fast solver, so it's good to, you know, it's always good to kind of do it like this, where you do your RBD sim first and then you attach your Vellum afterwards. I think I've done that. I've done that before. I remember doing that on the other KitBash stream as well, where I did the market stall and had the RBD sim of the market kind of timber stand destroying the, tearing up the cloth. And we could add tearing to this as well, which could be cool as the masts start to break. And, you know, I guess one thing that would be really cool to add to this would be to get the wires of the boat simulating as well, and that would add like an extra level of dynamism to it. Vellum Fluids, I've had a little bit of a look, but not too much as yet. I think I did try to play around with it for a little freelance job I was doing a couple of weeks ago, and I abandoned it because it was taking too long to figure out how to make it look good, and I ended up going back to Flip. But yeah, I mean, you know, it looks okay. It's for small scale stuff, right? It's not, and I guess it interacts, you know, across multiple things now as well, which is good, whereas Vellum and RBDs didn't solve together before. But yeah, I mean, for small scale stuff, it might be cool. I don't know. It's sort of, I think Flip is still going to give you the better fluid result, just because the solver is kind of more accurate, and you can get those finer details a little better. But yeah, it's worth a shot. And certainly if you can combine Vellum and, you know, the Vellum Fluids together, I think that, you know, that could be interesting. But I wouldn't use it to do the ocean or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, in our course we have like a Vellum, 6 weeks of Vellum content right at the end of the course, and one of the tutorials in there was combining Vellum Fluids and pop fluid. And every time I do that with the students, I think, yeah, the pop fluid's okay. It interacts, which is good, but I think it's running pop fluids over a Vellum grain setup. But then I go, oh, well, you know, maybe we could use Flip and Vellum and work out ways to combine flip sim and the vellum sim together, and you can do all that stuff through like SOP solvers, transferring velocities from one sim to the other, and so, you know, I think there's lots of interesting ways of getting simulations to play together. I can see a little problem here. There's a little bit of sail getting kind of caught and twisted, and we can see it kind of elongating a little bit, like the primitives are getting kind of big. It looks like it's sort of resolved itself, but you know, things like that would be something that you might need to go back and take a look at, try and fix. Let's have a scrub of this and see what it's like. I'm just gonna get rid of that templated boat. Maybe I'll write this to disk as well, because it is quite slow. I have been experimenting more with Houdini 19 though, and trying to get into Karma and trying to get into XPU, GPU and XPU stuff. Just experimenting with it. I'm still kind of very new to all that aspect of it, but it's cool. You know, I'll show you guys something that I've been playing with a little bit later, just as a, you know, a little nice test scene. Vellum Sales V1, all caps. Weird voices coming through my audio. So maybe I'll skip this track. Weird talking track. Alright, so Vellum Sales V1, we'll save to disk. And that's going to take its time. So yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, it's quite quick. Do I think it will be eventually favoured over Mantra? Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, one of the aspects that I don't like about Karma is that it's sort of removed from the workflow, I guess, that I'm used to. It's, you know, whereas Mantra, I can just hit render and it's all kind of, I've built everything in SOPs and it just kind of works. Finally started playing with Mantra. Yeah, you were very quick to jump on the Redshift bandwagon, which I guess is good. But yeah, look, Mantra is really strong in a lot of aspects. It's just very slow, which is annoying. So yeah, the thing I don't like about Karma is that it's within the stage context and you have to bring everything out of SOPs into that stage context and set up materials in a different way. But look, it's really not that bad. It just kind of, it just forces you to change the way that you've been working. And you can kind of just import everything from SOPs using like I think it's called a SOP import node. While this is running, let me see if I can pull it in. So yeah, you know, I think it probably will. It's just where the, you know, and with Karma, regular Karma, not the XPU version, which is like in alpha, so there's lots of things that you can't do with that yet. But with the Karma CPU, I mean, it does seem like you can do just about everything that you could do with Mantra. What was I doing here? Spaceship Lighting. I was just doing a very simple scene with a spaceship that you might recognize from some of my other things that I've done. Wait for this. Oh, that's right. I was doing some height field stuff, but I don't need that. Hey, there we go. So, I made it pink. So this is the scene that I was playing with. So it is just a spaceship kind of asset, and I was just playing around with it. I have this sphere, which is just textured, but it looks cool. You know, it looks like it's kind of because of the way the mapping works. It's just a polar map. It is this HDRI, 360 degree HDRI of like a view over a planet, like a stratosphere kind of thing. I think it's probably been created digitally, this image, but it looks cool, you know, and I've just got a little rotating camera in there, flying over the environment. Let's see, turn lights off. there we go. So yeah, you know, it's kind of cool. So I was just using this simple scenario to test what, you know, what I can do in stage context with Karma. And so if I jump to the stage context, it will, let's see, oh weird, oh I've disabled my cameras for some reason. So you can see, you can use these SOP import nodes, and you can either import a whole container or a specific node from that container, or you can import like these ones, scene import. I can import all the cameras and all the lights from that context, from SOPs, into this context. And if I change my view to Karma, there it is. And it's pretty good. It'll take, I think this takes about, I don't know, let's say it looks like it's going to take around 20 seconds or something. "19 seconds, not bad. What I haven't figured out yet, if anyone knows, I can't like hide these things in the viewport, the light geometry, which I find a little bit annoying, and nulls and stuff. But check this out. Actually, this camera doesn't move, but look. For like look deving and setting up a scene, this is pretty cool, you know. I'm so late to this stuff, but you know, it is very kind of cool to be able to do this interactively and see it kind of change and then resolve quite quickly to a nice looking render. So yeah, you know, I'm getting there slowly. Old man, takes me a long time to learn new things, but gotta keep updating the skills with Houdini. Can't fall too far behind, otherwise you'll be left behind. It's a little bit blown out here, but I really like using this environment or this background. It's kind of cool, you know. It makes you feel like it's really hovering over a planet. So I might be able to do something cool with this at some stage. But yeah, you know, I just chose something simple. There's no need to go crazy with something when when you're trying to learn a new renderer. Just keep it simple. Test out the materials. I think I was playing with Material X as well. So this is a Material X standard surface, which is the kind of new. I think it was developed by ILM. It's more like it's a universal kind of shader language, which you could import models that have the Material X shaders on them, and it should just work, and it should work across platforms, like different renderers, different 3D packages, you know. So I think that will start to become more and more utilized, certainly with the whole USD workflow. But yeah, you know, it's interesting. What would you say are the things that are limited? Well, with this, I don't know. I haven't seen the limitations yet. I haven't tried. A big thing for me and why I continue to use Mantra is like volumes over Redshift, say, or the other renderers, like Fire and stuff like that. I find really hard to get right in Redshift, but I haven't tried that with Karma. I assume, because Karma can use the same shaders as Mantra, so I don't know if there's any difference between the two. I haven't gotten that deep into it, so I can't say for certain. But with XPU, for instance, so have a look at, so I've just got a constant material on this sphere in this context, which I copied from when I set it up on Mantra. And when I switch to the stage context, or Karma, and if I switch the renderer to the XPU engine, you can see that that shader doesn't work. So I have to come up, I haven't figured that out yet. So, I need to kind of work those things out and figure out what shader I can use for which thing. XP, as you can see, it's in alpha, so there are bound to be many things that don't work in an alpha version of any software. Maybe they're continually developing it and will release updates as they go, or maybe they'll just wait until next year. You know, it's much faster though. It's cool, you know, how quick it is, but yeah, you know, there's going to be limitations. But yeah, in terms of the differences between Karma and Mantra, but the thing is, I don't know how much faster Karma is. It is still CPU based. So, you know, you would have to do some tests to see, well, you know, this also renders pretty quickly in Mantra, this scene. It's rendering 12 frames here at the moment. If I go to my SOP context and go render from Mantra, it's going to be kind of different depending on the settings, but, you know, this is a pretty quick render anyway, so it's like, yeah, I don't know I haven't seen any kind of comparisons done between the two. What have I got going on here? I guess the lighting's all different, but you can see this is a pretty quick render anyway, so it's like, I don't know, you have to do that stuff and do the comparisons yourself and figure it out. I almost prefer this render, I don't know. Anyway, I digress. What is the industry standard of rendering software in the film industry? There is no real standard. I mean, there are common renderers used across studios, but really, I mean, it is down to the studio's choice. So, you know, at Method, for example, I don't know what they're using at the moment. It's been a while since I've been there, but we use Mantra for pretty much everything in Houdini. But, you know, in the lighting department, for example, they used V-Ray for a lot of stuff in Maya. But, you know, they also would pick and choose their renderer depending on the problem. So some renderers can handle things that other renderers can't, and, you know, maybe that's what you choose to do that job or to do that task. There is really no right and wrong kind of renderer out there. It's just sort of whatever suits the problem trying to be solved. So yeah, you know, GPU renderers tend not to be utilized as much in the film industry. I guess, I don't know, you know, maybe that's just because of the infrastructure that they have. Their render farms are all tend to be kind of CPU based, but that's probably changing these days as well with you know, with these kind of GPU renderers and GPU tools that are available. I'm sure that's changing across the industry as well. It just sort of depends. But, you know, at home, when you're working by yourself, Mantra is very slow and it's painful. But when you're in a studio with a render farm, it's kind of like not that bad. You know, 10 minutes a frame is not really that bad when you have 200 machines at your disposal. And, you know, if your job's only 100 frames long, you send it to the farm, 100 machines pick it up, or even 30 machines pick it up at a time. It'll be done in half an hour, the whole render. So it's kind of like Mantra has never really been a problem for me, the speed of it, until you start working at home by yourself, and then it's like, oh man, it takes a long time, 10 minutes a frame. I've got to render them all out one after the other on my single machine, and that then becomes a bit of an issue. But working in a studio, it's like, that's never really bothered me. If it gets up to an hour a frame, then you're like, yeah, that's a little slow. What else? What can we do? What can we do to optimize? Well, this simulation is kind of not amazing. There's a lot of kind of errors and stretching things going on here. But it is what it is, and it does take a long time to write these out, so I'm just going to take it as it is and see what it looks like here over my boat simulation. And, well, it's sticking to the sails mostly, which is good. I think these areas here, these ones, which were constrained to the constraint to the kind of wires, maybe. Like these, yeah, really thin kind of constraints. That one is sort of, you know, not doing so well. I don't know what's going on with my music. So, oh, there we go. Yeah, so, you know, those ones aren't doing so well, but I don't know. It's okay. It's kind of, it'll serve the purpose for what we need. And I want to talk about like getting this into some water. So we have a couple of options. We could just do, as I usually attempt, and as I have shown you, I think at least once before in another stream, with the spaceship rising through the water, we could just do the ocean evaluate, ocean spectrum, and use this water surface that we're about to get as, you know, the sort of, as the surface of the water, and then we add simulations on top of this rather than doing a full flip sim. So as you can see, that, you know, does kind of look like a boat sitting in the water, but we need to work on the height of it a little bit. And then, you know, every kind of contact of this thing is going to splash in the water. So that, you know, that could work. We could come up with a system for sticking these pieces at the end to the water surface so that they kind of don't look like they're floating, or perhaps we should just move this up so it's sort of more, much more close, so they're much closer. So they're much closer to the, you know, to the surface. So you can imagine, you know, if we added particles to that, I think it would look pretty cool. I don't really know how it works with the cannons. There's a lot of water going in there, but yeah, we'll just pretend that that's not happening. I don't know. You know, this is probably what I would do, but I would like to try and see what it looks like with a full flip sim as well, because I think that will ultimately look cooler. Drawn Skull, sorry I missed your comment. So VFX studios mix and utilize Houdini with their own engine software like ILM, Weta Digital. Yeah, like with ILM and Weta, who have quite custom render stuff going on, you know, they're not always just using the built-in renderers. They will use Houdini for creating the effects. They might even have their own tools as well for creating the effects. And then potentially just export that data. Or maybe their renderers hook in to Houdini, and that could be an option as well. I'm not really sure. But like ILM, for example, use RenderMan, which you can use inside of Houdini. But yeah, you know, you can export the data from Houdini and then bring it into whatever lighting environment you might be working in. So often in Visual Effects Studios, you know, you'll pass your effect, let's say you do some VFX, you'll pass that off to the lighting department, and they will bring it in to, maybe they use Maya, maybe they use Houdini to set up their lighting environment, maybe they use Clarice, another software which is basically just for scene assembly and lighting, and that's a completely standalone thing that then also you can use whatever renderer, you know, you want with that too. So, you know, there are many ways of doing it, but yeah, you might just use Houdini for creating the effect and then export the data out, either through BGO files or Alembic files or other export formats, VDB for example for volumes, and then the lighters will do whatever they want with it and in whatever kind of context they are using. That is a very common kind of workflow in VFX. But small studios don't tend to do that. Small studios tend to just keep it in, you know, they'll choose, well, it's very expensive to have lots of different packages, so they might just choose Houdini, or they might choose Houdini for effects and Maya for lighting, and then just export the data from Houdini to Maya, and then render everything in Maya with whatever renderer they choose to use there. getting stuff out of Houdini to Maya is always, you know, fun challenge, problematic. Scales are different, attributes, you know. Houdini can just handle stuff, you know, it handles bad geometry, it handles lots of data, and Maya is very kind of finicky with what it can handle. Can't handle some sorts of broken geometry and, you know, weird things going on in the mesh. So you can kind of not know that you've got something wrong with your mesh in Houdini because it just works and it will just do whatever, it'll let you go. But as soon as you try to export it to Maya, it's like, oh, this boat's completely, you know, messed up because of your fractures have made it weird, and you've done some booleans which have made some strange faces, and yeah, it's just, you know, getting stuff out of Houdini can be a problem, but it's usually on the Maya end. Alrighty, so yeah, you know, this would probably be my first choice, would be to kind of use a simple ocean surface like this and add additional simulations to it. But I know, you know, that's boring, and we want to see a full flip sim. It may take the rest of the stream to simulate 2 frames, but let's see what we can do. So, because it's quite involved to do a full ocean tank, and it's not something that I do all that often, really. What I would probably do here is just use the shelf tool to get started. And I mean, I don't usually advocate doing shelf tools, but it's kind of, you know, in this context where you maybe haven't done it for a long time, or you just want a starting point, then yeah, I think it's fine. So you could use something like this, the wave tank. You can see it creates a flip simulation from an underlying ocean surface. The only thing you have to be careful of when you're doing this is if you've got dot networks, as we do, we've got a dot network here. Yeah, that's probably the only one that's going to affect. If you've got dot networks in your scene and you hit a shelf tool that is meant to be creating a dot network, it can sometimes embed the dot network from the shelf tool inside, or the setup from the shelf tool inside the dot network that you already have existing. So you do have to be careful, and sometimes what I will do is just open a fresh Houdini. Another one. How many do I have open now? Too many. Let me close this one. I probably could have used that. And just do the shelf tool in that, and then copy it across. So let's try that. I'm just going to control click the wave tank. There's no object to follow. I'm just going to hit enter, and it will go through and generate all the stuff that we need. And you can see it's created a ton of stuff, and we don't necessarily need all of this. One thing I don't like about shelf tools is the auto dot network at SOP level. I do like to have it embedded, but you know, it's okay. We could also do this. We could subnet the whole thing, and I don't know if that'll break anything. Hopefully not. But let's just call this ocean setup. And I'm gonna then extract that and put it here. And then I don't have to worry about it messing up what I've got going in this setup here. So I'm gonna ditch that. This is all packed still, this boat, at this point. It's okay that it is, but we just need to be mindful of that fact. So I'm going to say out boat with sails. Maybe I'll say out boat sim with sails. And then I'm going to go into my little ocean setup subnetwork. And wave tank initial is where you do the main setup. So this is describing the size of the simulation. So I need to make it much bigger. What I might do actually is object merge /obj/ship setup out boat sim with sails. There it is. So I'll just template that. And now I can see, as I'm making this a little larger. So I'm going to keep it kind of tight to the boat for starters. as you can see, I'm getting a fair amount of points here, 648,000, so I might just make that lower resolution, 0.25, 234,000, not too bad. I'm going to bypass these file caches that it has created, so it's just reading live. Here's our Ocean Preview node, Ocean Evaluate, which is just kind of what we did before, and that will show you what the surface looks like. So the ocean spectrum is what controls the look of the waves, and then that is going to drive the look of the points that are going into flip. And then it outputs a whole bunch of things that are going to be utilized in flip for guiding this simulation. So we've got the initial particles, the surface volume, the velocity volume, the initial surface volume, and the initial velocity, which is the Vell field. There we go. So a whole bunch of things get output. And yeah, it caches it to disk because it can be quite slow, but we don't need that. And then we've got fluid interior, which is for rendering only. I'm not going to use that. And this is the import area. So we're DOP importing here. This stuff you could kind of ditch and recreate yourself. It's really just the Wavetank initial and the AutoDOP network that I wanted to skip the creation aspect of that. As you can see, the flip object, the flip sim itself is very simple. Now you could move this inside of here, but the last time I did that was with a student, and as I realized after I'd done it, all these things are hooked up and they're all linked. So if you move it and paste it in here, it will break these connections, which are all sort of, that one's actually just based on channel. You can see this one's referencing the AutoDOP network. So you'd have to go and update all those, which is a little bit annoying, but yeah, we'll just leave it here. And I'll call this Ocean Sim. And just hit play. What we should see is a nice little flip sim, just kind of undulating with the ocean surface, the ocean kind of spectrum stuff. You see the edges are flickering, so it just kind of updates and pulses a little bit at the edges, but that should be okay. Now let's get our boat in as a static object. So perhaps what I will do in here is just create another geometry and call it Collider. Object merge /obj/ship setup out boat sim with sails unpack. It's going to unleash a whole lot of geometry and a whole lot of attributes. I'm going to clean this up because it's very kind of bloated with stuff. We don't need half of that, so I'm going to exclude velocity, keep the velocities that are there, and I'm going to just delete everything. Delete UVs, delete whatever's on the primitives, delete the details if there's any. Now we've got just P and V, and we've got 33 groups. We also probably don't need the groups, so I'm going to put a group delete down. And we can always change this, but it's good to kind of, just clean things up. There we go, nice and light. And now I'm going to say out geo B2B from polygons, and okay, so we can see a bit of an issue here with the sails. The sails don't have any thickness, so they're not going to turn into a volume particularly well. But I'm just going to kind of ignore that for now, because it's sort of not terribly important at this stage. So 0.05 is giving me a voxel res of 8 million, which is not too bad. Maybe I'll just leave it at 0.1 for starters, just so it's a little faster. And then I'm just going to copy this null here. And say out VDB. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, because this is an RBD sim, and there's a potential for really small pieces to fly around, and maybe, fly around in terms of, like, they might fly off into infinity or something. If something accidentally gets, you know, broken, then they could go really large. So you can, let's see, there's our bounding box, and it's actually okay, but it's always a good idea with this stuff to just put a group down before you do a VDB, and maybe group based on bounding regions. So 10, 10, 10, okay, so 100, 100, 100, and I'll just manually take that down a little bit. And yeah, potentially we could also just even keep it to the surface if we wanted to, yeah, and remove a lot of that stuff, although that might create problems for the VDB creation, so I will do that. And that's going to create a group which we can then blast the opposite of. So if anything does go outside this group, it will get removed. And what that means is that we're not going to create, if something did fly off into infinity or very far away, our VDB is not going to get created and, you know, create potentially a ginormous volume which can crash your machine. So it's always a good idea to put that in, or at least be very certain that you don't have any pieces that are flying off into infinity at any point during your simulation. And sometimes the easiest way to tell that is just to have a look through your simulation and just hit, you know, frame your view. Because sometimes if you do have one, you'll see your view gets reframed to like that, and you can turn on your point display and you'll see like a little point over here at 1000. And when you go to create a volume off that, your memory will fill up, and you'll no more Houdini. So it's a very good thing good sort of habit to get into the practice of, you know, at least checking, but, you know, putting that little fail-safe blast in there. Alright, so let's go back to our simulation. Crazy music going on. Static object, soft path, collider, and this one's going to be out geo. Use deforming, reevaluate to interpolate geometry. If you're using subframes, you need to have that turned on. Collisions, we're going to use the RBD solver channel, volume, mode, volume sample, and then we bring in our VDB. Double check that that is looking okay by turning on the collision guide. It might be slow for a very heavy object like this, or, you know, high resolution. You can see that it's not looking that good. It's looking very framey. So you can put a little offset in the surface as well, and that can kind of peak it or inflate it a little bit. Depending on the scale, you might need to do a lot or a little. 0.01, let's try 0.1. Hey, look at that, we even got the sails when we did that. So that's pretty cool. This is going to be slow now with the collision in there, but let's see what we get. Check the flip solver as well, see what that's doing. It's set to splashy, which is good, as opposed to swirly, so it's going to be nice and get nice ballistic behavior. And yeah, let's go, so 0.25, hit save, and play. And you can see the steps that are going to be slow here. If anything's really slow, you'll see it, you know, frame by frame. You'll see it printing out here, and you can see the slow step is this unpack, and then the VDB from polygons. So we'll just you know, watch it, see what happens. You know, I can see an issue here where the water is kind of inside the boat, and I think that's being caused by not having a collision when we first created the tank. So you will see, if I go back to our wave tank creation, there is this merge collisions input on the wave tank. And what that is for removing points around that object. So you can see when I plug in, I've already got the boat merged in here. When I plug that in, it creates a void for where that boat is. So that when you start off the simulation, there's no water inside the boat. And, yeah, that's a good thing, because we don't want water. Although, conceivably, this boat is going to fill up with water because of these stupid cannon holes in it. Well, not stupid, but, you know, the way that I've positioned my boat is that it is going to go below the water in that area. So they will go in. We could fill it. We could try and cap it so that it doesn't create that effect. But we'll just let it go and see what happens. The other thing that's cool with ghosts, I was thinking, you know, if we do some ghost stuff next week, hair is kind of a cool thing to do with ghosts as well, like a kind of underwater hair effect, where you've got this sort of, you know, floating, rather than it being just, you know, hanging down because of gravity. Ghosts can kind of be, you know, they defy the laws of physics, so they can have hair that looks like it's underwater or something, which could be quite cool to play with. Hey Squirt, nice tips. I've been playing with Houdini for 3 or more years, on and off. Mostly terrains for Unity. Cool. Yeah, that's great. Terrains are, you know, great for creating for an environment, certainly, and I've been playing with the terrain tools a little bit recently. I've got to learn more about it, but yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of you know, how you can utilize Houdini and then get out back to your, you know, back to your kind of working environment of choice. You use Houdini as a tool to get something done, and then move, you know, move back to Unreal or wherever you might be. Are you going to do any underwater effects here, like bubbles? I could. It might not be necessary to, but you certainly could. I mean, you could do that even without the flip sim. You could just, how would I do that? I'd probably, you know, use that ocean surface that I created, that grid one, or even the one that comes with this little setup, to delete anything that was above the water surface, and then emit bubbles off anything that was below that surface. And that, you know, you could just do that as particles, so pops, and you just have those kind of rising off anything that's underneath the water. You could also drive the amount of bubbles based on the speed of the things, so that if they're moving really slow, they're just emitting maybe a couple of bubbles, but if they really crash into the water, then perhaps they emit lots more bubbles. So you could do something like that. Yeah, it would be interesting. Whether it's necessary or not depends on the framing of the camera and, you know, how much of that sort of detail you're going to see. So you can see this simulation, even at low resolution. This 20 odd frames that I'm getting here, 24 frames it looks like, I guess, is 5 gig. So, you know, if you extrapolate that out, it's going to be pretty heavy if we were to try and display that whole simulation in memory. So, you know, we'd have to be careful with our resolution. I'm not seeing a lot of splashing going on. There's not a great deal of interaction going on here. You know, you would expect to see a little more sort of white water and interaction. The boat, I guess, is moving quite slow at this point, but yeah, you know, I maybe would expect to see a little more. And I guess what I'll do, because yeah, it's a long way to get to the point where the boat is crashing and the tentacle. Oh, I forgot the tentacle, of course. The tentacle, you know, sort of comes up around the end of the shot. So probably what we should do is start this simulation at that point. So let's figure out what frame would be a good one to start. I should go and grab the tentacle as well, because that, you know, that's the kind of main driver of the action, and that is here, our tentacle. got one? Okay. Go in here. Out. Tentacle. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So, you know, we could have that coming through the water as well, which means that we'd have to start around kind of 100, but I think what I'll do is start it around 165 maybe. This is not packed, but I'm just going to copy this setup here. Let's see what we've got. We don't really have too much on here. I might put a trail actually to recalculate those velocities, or to calculate velocities on that one. Out geo, so I'll call this one out tentacle geo. And group blast. That's not necessary for this one because we know exactly what we're getting with that. Out tentacle VDB. And I knew I should have been more specific with this now, so let's go out boat VDB and out boat geo just so it's clear. Also, potentially the velocities might need to be recalculated on this guy. They didn't really seem to be doing a whole lot in terms of collisions, so let's check this marker, change that to V. Yeah, I mean, it looks okay, but let's put a trail down and see how different it looks with the trail. Because often the velocities coming out of RBDs can be a little funny. And you can see there, the trail on the boat looks quite a bit different. So I'm going to use that instead. And yeah, let's go with that. So on this one, I'm going to set this start frame to 165. Wait for it to re-cook. That VDB on the boat, or that collision in general on the boat, probably needs to be, you know, cached because it is relatively slow. Static object number 2. This one's going to be out tentacle geo. Merge this one together. And this one, tentacle VDB. Turn the boat off for starters. Let's see how this works. You can see the tentacle's nice and quick. And there we go. Nice splashing interaction, which is great. So that's cool. Stuff is working. Oh, look, we're hitting the bounds there of the top of the container. So let's adjust that. That is this box size here, which is reading off the wave tank, but we should be able to also change it here, and it will update the wave tank. There you go, so you can see 10. Yeah, we can make that quite tall. I think we may be able to move that up without too much happening. Too much bad stuff happening. There we go. Let's try that. Because we want those particles, if they splash up in the air, we want those to sort of go as far as they can. You can see with the wave tank, you kind of get this bubble motion happening underneath the surface as well. Like you get this water pulled down, and then it will sort of rise up. Hey, that's looking cool. All right, let's get the slow boat in there and see what happens. Save. I might, you know, also just what should I do? Yeah, I guess I'll just flip book it. Let's see. 165. Oh, and you know what? I'm gonna save it a bit more to RAM as well. So I've got about 60 gig-ish to play with. So I might just change this. Let's see. I probably should get. I don't know, let's get 20 gig. Maybe 30. 30,000. Yeah, why not? Certainly is nice to have a lot of RAM. Alright. And then at least we can see so why it's oops, color correction. Just Whoops. Then at least as it's simulating, we can watch it in in hilarious motion. You will eventually get better and better. I'll just stop it for a little bit. But we should hopefully see the boat motion in there, kind of pushing stuff around. Hopefully the boat collider is okay for this, for this simulation, and we don't have to go back and change it too much, but we may need to go and thicken it up maybe if it's not sort of colliding enough. We'll just have to wait and see how it performs. Oh, look at that. Nice. Oops. And you could potentially clean this up even further in terms of the collision, where you don't utilize all the really tiny parts that are in this boat. You could potentially omit those, because they're not really going to add a whole lot to the flip sim. So, potentially just remove those from the simulation. We'll still potentially have an issue with the water surface and those pieces that rise up. So we may... it may be that you need to go back to your RBD sim and change that level at which they rise to, which is, I think I just set it at 0. It's that force, basically, which says above 0 fall down and below 0 rise up. So you could change that level to be -1, say, so that they sort of equalize around -1 and sort of bob up and down around that level, and then they probably won't go too high above the water surface. Yeah, it's probably just something that you need to play with, run it through and see, see how it's kind of working. I would expect a little more from the boat. I'm not really getting a whole lot happening from the boat. There's a lot of cool stuff happening from the Tentacle. Hey, I'm glad you like the music. I don't know if it's... I could turn it up. It's pretty quiet, but... yeah, I would expect a little more from the boat. It's not... We're getting a little bit happening here, but I'm not really seeing a ton of nice interaction. It may just be the collision needs a little work, or we could force it as well. We could create velocities on the boat which help to push that stuff upwards. You can use just the motion velocities, but you could also add velocities in a particular direction off the surface of the collision that just point upwards, to throw water upwards. As that collision touches those particles, it will transfer that velocity to those particles, and they will shoot in whatever direction is on that vector. So you can give it whatever vector you like. Usually you just want the collision to be the motion of how it's moving, but you can give it whatever vector you like, and it will force it to travel in that direction. We could also potentially give this water more depth, and perhaps that's part of it, is that this is a very shallow wave tank, and there's not a lot of water sort of below the surface, and perhaps that's why it's just sort of pulling through that very thin band and not sort of pushing and displacing a lot of water around it. So that could be another option. But yeah, I'll let it run for a little bit. Hopefully we'll see when these parts of the masts slam in, although I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing a ton of interaction. I guess here we're starting to see a little bit from the boat. But, like this piece, for example, I would expect that to give me quite a large push or splash in that direction, but it's not really doing it. It's also moving quite quick, so perhaps upping the sub-steps would help as well. These are all the things that you need to kind of play with, but first things first, we need to run the simulation and just see what it looks like, and then we can go and address the things that aren't working. I love what's happening with the tentacle. I think that's very cool. We just need to kind of get that working for the rest of the boat as well. because you know you can see it's lacking. We're seeing this mask slam through the water and cut through, and we're really lacking a lot of that detail and interaction there. So we've got three sims and counting now. We've got our initial RBD sim, we've got our Vellum sim, which is based on that, and then our flip sim, which is being driven by the collisions and the ocean surface. But yeah, the collisions are what's making it feel really dynamic. I often see people try to combine every simulation into one Uber dot network, and it's just you're not going to have a good time when you do that. So it's better to kind of try and separate them out as much as you can. If you can, you know, and you don't need that dynamic interaction, which often you don't, then split them out. Do each one sequentially. And it's much easier to get through it that way. So, yeah, look, there's some cool things happening here, but you know, I want more. I like how it's resolving here at the end. You know, there's a bit of a splash coming out as this boat crashes down and through. There's a little bit of water getting kicked out here, which is really cool. And there are little moments where the boat creates some interaction. Our water width probably needs to be a little more as well, but you know. All right, so let's take a look. We got some of that stored in memory, which is good. So we can have a bit of a closer look at what's going on. You can see under the hood, or under the water's surface, it's getting clipped. Potentially, maybe we need to drop that down so that we get a bit more stuff being dragged through. This is really cool though, this kind of... Oh! Just noticed, I just saw my camera go off. Let's see if I can fix that. Hey, there we go. Nice. So, yeah, I really like this. This is super cool, this splash that's happening from the tentacle. We just need more action from the boat. So, let's see if we can get that happening. Use boat geo 0.1. Let's check out this collision guide. Oh, actually, I mean, yeah, that one is kind of okay to look at, but let's actually view the guide from the collision field, because this is the most important thing. We'll hide these geos. Yeah, and look at that. It's not particularly good, is it? No wonder it's not colliding terribly well. It's very low resolution, and it's very kind of patchy. So this is the one you should always look at, this collision guide here. It's, you know, it's the thing that is doing the collisions, the actual field. So, as you can see, the tentacle looks pretty nice and solid here. Go back, you can see, I mean, it's getting clipped, there's a little bound there, but it's looking pretty good, and this is looking very sparse. Even with our little offset there, it's looking pretty sparse. So, let's go back to the first frame. You'll notice on flip you have this collision separation, which allows you to have a different resolution for the collision volume to the particle separation. So we've got a pretty sparse amount of particles here, 0.25, and that, I want that because otherwise it's really kind of slow. But our collisions aren't working too well, so let's up the resolution of the collisions so you can have a different separation value, 0.2. Let's have a look. We'll step forward one frame. So this is only slightly different, slightly higher resolution, lower number, higher res. Now we can see gas build collision mask is a little slower. It's going to go through. Got to keep an eye on my RAM, just make sure that that's not peeking out. But look at that. That's looking a lot better. Collision separation of 0.2 versus 0.25. I bet that's going to work a lot nicer than what we had. Let's set it to 0.25 and see what happens to that. And maybe we don't need to go down to 0.2. Maybe we can go to 0.24 or to 0.23. You know, try and be as efficient as possible with that choice. Go back to the first frame. I don't believe changes to this setting occur if you do it after the first frame, so go back to the first frame, re-simulate that frame, and see if we can see that change. Well, that's interesting. A different collision separation, but the same... I mean, yeah, we've ticked that on, but the same value. How bizarre. So let's go back to frame 1 and solve that again. Unless it degrades over time, but yeah, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Let's see. 165. Step forward 1 frame. Yeah, well, look at that. I think, you know, I think what happens when you... so the way that the volumes in Flip get calculated is that they have this grid scale where it's 2 times the particle separation. So probably what the collision sort of resolution is 0.5. 2 times 0.25 is 0.5. Devon Townsend. Oh, cool. Thanks, Ivan. Sounds good. I'll look it up. Yeah, ambient music is great for streams, and I like listening to it while I work. But yeah, I don't have my Led Zeppelin poster up, but I'm a big kind of 60s music aficionado. And I wish I could play it during my streams, but YouTube wouldn't like that. So yeah, the volume that we're seeing here is 2 times this value. So the volume voxel resolution would be 0.5. So I think even though these values are the same, what's happening here? Yeah, that's right. Rock and roll. Rocker in a hat. It's called, I can't remember the type of hat. Panama. Genuine Panama. So yeah, what we're getting is actually 0.5 voxel resolution, but when we turn this on, it's taking me a long time to explain this. When we turn this on, we're not getting 0.5, we are getting 0.25. So even though, yeah, it's the same value, we're still getting a higher, like double resolution. So we could potentially go 0.3, or even, you know, if we start at 0.5, that's should be what we were seeing before with this off. Yes, okay. So let's drop it down to 0.4. And see what we get. A little better, still pretty bad. 0.3. I'm just trying to see, you know, what sort of efficiencies or how much I can save, because, you know, render simulation times are killer. So I'm just trying to make it slightly more efficient, but maybe we won't be able to. You know, we need a good collision. Look, I mean, that is getting better, but there's still holes, so okay. I'll do 0.25. Same res. It's going to be slow, but hopefully it'll be a little better. Let's take a look at some settings on here while we're at it. I'm going to... What am I going to do? I'm going to turn on the Vorticity attribute. I'm potentially going to use that for other effects or for shading. And reseeding, behavior, yeah, I don't need that stuff. Volume motion, flip, splashy, probably don't need anything else. Extrapolation mode, I could turn this on to fast moving colliders because we do have kind of fast moving collisions. So that sometimes will help with the way that it's basically to do with the volumes. It extrapolates those volumes further ahead. It's like padding on Pyro. And you can see here's the padding value max cells to extrapolate, so it's kind of extrapolating that further if they're moving faster. Sometimes it helps, so it can be a good thing to try. And yeah, okay, so let's turn this stuff back on, turn the guide back off, and we'll save again, and off we go. Don't think I was using a camera in this view. I'm gonna have a slightly different view. It's gonna be annoying when I flip book over the top of this, so maybe I'll just create a new. If you want to preserve the end play that you've got open with a flipbook in it, you can just change the label. Thanks, Tom. You can change the label and it will pop open a new end play. So that can be a good, yeah, you can just put whatever in there. You could give it a proper name if you want. I just do random numbers. But then I'll have two end plays in there and it will pop open a new one and leave that other one there. We're doing color correction, get rid of that gamma. So now, hopefully, that I've updated that collision mask, and you'll see it gets stuck on that collision mask now, because the collisions are so much higher resolution. That is going to be the slowest thing in our simulation now, unfortunately, but it is hopefully going to make an impact into the result. How's everybody doing out there? Anybody working on anything cool? Anybody doing anything exciting in Houdini? Or otherwise? Always interested to hear what you guys are up to. I'm going to turn this into something. It's going to be hard to do it in the stream, so I think this is going to be the last week that I'll work on this in the stream. But I'm going to turn this into a project, because I think it has... I think it has a lot of potential to be really cool. I'm gonna work with an animator to get a decently animated tentacle, not my terribly animated bend modifier tentacle. Get some curling around the mask, things like that. I think that could be really, really nice. And yeah, getting a full kind of water sim, even creating a nice little environment. This could be in a harbour. I have this whole Treasure Island pack from KitBash. Thank you very much. And I could create a little harbour scene with pirate kind of village in the background, kind of similar to what they have in their in their example of it. Let me see if I can pull that up. That could be a cool little setting to put this in. It's always good to give your effects some context. Let's see. Yeah, here. So you can see the boat is out there. But we have all these buildings, so we could potentially build an environment like this, or a little scene, and that could be something for another stream, certainly. Building another kind of scene like this, but maybe I'm thinking more of a kind of I guess I was thinking of having like a pier or something, or some sort of wooden structure surrounding the boat, like it's moored in the harbour, and then having wooden buildings all down it or something. You're making a flame creature. That's cool. How are you doing that, Tom? What are you using? You're doing it in Houdini, I'm guessing. Yeah, fire and characters is really cool. Can be challenging sometimes, especially if they're animating and moving around a lot. But yeah, cool, nice. I look forward to seeing that if you can share it. Alright, so I am seeing a little bit more interaction here from the boat. These particles around the boat are starting to go white, which is good. A good sign that the velocities are being transferred there. I didn't make the depth any greater, so I probably should have done that, but hopefully this will be a good indication of what's going on with the boat, and we'll see a bit more of that interaction. Falling into the water, that would be cool. bubbling like lava underwater. That'd be amazing. So yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see some more splashes here. Yeah, cool, Tom. No rush. I know these things take time, you know. It takes a long time to polish stuff, but yeah, cool. If you know, I'd love to see it if you're willing to share. So, yeah, I think that's starting to work. You know, I think it potentially could be amped up even more. I mean, on the trail you have a multiplier for velocity, so you could just double it and see what happens. You know, just see if you can really amp up the velocities and get a stronger interaction. Or, like I said, you could just add some velocity in a particular direction. You know, if we really want splashes going up, we just add upward vectors to that velocity, and that, yeah, that could help. I guess the other thing that I want to get out of, you know, potentially using proper animation to drive this effect is a bit of a slower kind of takedown, where this, you know, this pulls the boat down incredibly quickly at the moment, and it just sort of, you know, disappears really, really fast. So it would be cool to kind of, you know, delay that a little bit, not have it take, you know, not have it happen over 20 frames, but have it kind of happen over the full 240, or, you know, it doesn't have to be 240, over 100 frames, let's say, where, you know, the tentacles come up and just slowly intertwine into the boat and then pull it down. I have that, you know, I have those GIFs that I was kind of looking at. I don't know why I use GIFs. I guess they're just easier to bring up than videos, but you know, this kind of nice slow takedown, it's all intertwined, and I guess that's where I got the idea, the wrap around, the mast type stuff. It just gives it some weight and some scale to it. And this bubbling and churning water could be really cool to kind of get in there as well. Could be a separate sim, could be the same sim, could be a custom force that you put in there. See, with this sort of framing, it's sort of unnecessary to do a full flip sim, you know, which is why I sort of would approach it the other way that I first mentioned at the start, where you have an ocean surface and you're sort of emitting stuff on top of that. Because of this camera angle, you get away with that for sure, you know. So, yeah, you know, something like that would be really cool. I really like this snaking feeling. It just feels amazing. It's so cool. And this winding around the mast, I think that is also really cool. So that's something I want to do with this project. But that's going to take, yeah, it's going to take time. As with anything. But I think it would be a really nice kind of project or a tutorial piece that we, you know, I don't go into great depth in these streams, but I do, you know, when we do the tutorials for the course, we take you through step by step how to do this stuff, and go into a lot more detail and finish it off as well. So, you know, it might be a nice one to turn into a tutorial for the course at some point. Always thinking about ways to make, you know, more exciting tutorials, and this I think is a really cool one. So yeah, we're getting some splashes in there, some better splashes. You can see that's cutting through a little nicer than what it was before. Getting this kind of nice interaction. The sails, you know, because they're really thin surfaces, those collisions probably still aren't working too well. But I think 190 was all we had before, so let's just have a little rotate around and see how it's looking. It's definitely looking better. It's a lot more cool stuff going on. So yeah, you know, this height, or this depth, that could be extended to create greater sort of underwater stuff happening. We have the ocean surface and the height that we could use to determine what is below the surface and what is not, and we could render those as bubbles potentially. Let's come out of here, because this frame is, you know, really quite nice. Let's go. We have this stuff already, but I'm just going to do my own import and processing. So I'm going to call this surfacing, and object, or what am I doing? Dop import fields. Dot network. Dot dot slash. Dot dot slash. What did I call it? What did I call you? Ocean sim. That's what it is. Ocean sim, and then ocean sim slash flip. Oh no, what is it called? It's another issue with the shelf tool stuff. Is like, what is it called? A flip object. It calls it wave tank. Choose flip fluid. There we go. So out of here you can see we get the surface field, the velocity field, and the points. If you want to get the visualization back, which I quite like, you can kind of create your own one. So do a speed attribute, at speed equals length v at v. And you could do the color ramp inside of here, but you know, I kind of like just having it as a separate thing, and then you can get it in there. You can choose whatever color you want. White water. Hey, there we go. And then get your range. So, you know, you can kind of use this as a diagnostic tool as well to determine what is the fastest moving particle in my simulation here. So I can see, you know, I've got quite a bit of range here. If we have a look at the speed attribute in here, we can tell for certain. Sometimes, you know, you just do it visually. So there we go, 63 is actually the highest at this particular moment in time. So 63 is 0. So that's the range that we have, but you can bring that down so that it, you know, looks more like that. Now, we also have Vorticity in here. And that is going to describe the direction change, or the magnitude of the direction change. So if things are changing direction really quickly, they get a higher vorticity. If they're changing more slowly, they get a lower vorticity. And let's check out the vorticity value. We've got some pretty high ones. We go up to 86. So, but you can see the concentration of those high values. Let's take it down a bit. Let's go 40 to 50 and see if we can isolate. So anything over 50 is going to have white. So really, there's very minimal that are higher than 50. So let's take it down 10 to 20. So all that stuff is happening where most of the churn is. So I like to use the vorticity attribute for doing bubbles and foam and all that kind of jazz, you know. So you can see, like, you can filter out the low vorticity, and then this higher vorticity stuff can be rendered as foam. It can be split out to a completely separate meshing type. So we could split that out and do at vorticity greater than 10 points. So there you go, got that kind of isolated. So 4 to 10, we could even do greater than 4 if we wanted to. Take a bit more of that stuff. You can sort of choose what you want there. And then you've got the other stuff, which is not. It's everything else. So you could do it like that and mesh those two things differently, or you could just mesh the whole thing and then have this stuff as kind of like an extra thing on top. So let's put down a VDB from particle fluid or VDB from particles. Particle fluid has, you know, the influence scale, the droplet scale, that kind of stuff. Sometimes I just like to do the VDB from particles. It's just simple. Just check that you have a P scale. There we go. So we can take, I usually set the minimum radius to 0, and then just take my P scale value down till it looks okay. This is a very low res sim, don't forget, so it's, yeah, it's going to be a bit kind of bit of a low res mesh. Set the voxel size to something a bit better. That's 53 million voxels. And then I'm going to do a VDB smooth SDF. And so this is an SDF field that I've created. So I'll use this one. The operations have some greater kind of smoothing operations in the SDF version. There are two smooths. So there's a VDB smooth, which will work on density fields as well as SDF fields. But that doesn't have the same options. So this does have this laplation or mean curvature flow, which are good smooths to preserve details. So you know, you can see like the mean value got rid of everything. The laplation is still, it's a bit aggressive when it's low resolution. But let's take the iterations down so it's not doing the same amount. And let's see what we can get going. VDB smooth, and then I'm just going to convert to VDB so I can see this what it looks like as a mesh. So convert VDB, convert it to polygons. And it can be hard to do this when it's so low res, but you know, we can just sort of, you can see that it's really kind of sparse. We'll just inflate it a little bit. Pretty slow. Can do it. Maybe a little more ISO value. You can push it a little bit, but you can't push it like crazy, you know. You can see it's pretty blobby. So maybe what I should do actually is just watching my RAM usage as well while I'm doing this. Not too bad. Maybe I'll just inflate this a little bit, 0.5, so it's not so crazy. Now when we do the smooth, things will stick together a little more, hopefully. And you can see now I might be able to up the iterations again. It's, yeah, it's kind of challenging to do it when it's so low res, but I just want to kind of see and show you guys a little bit of the surfacing stuff that I might do in terms of shading for this. So what could I do? Maybe take this down now. Lovely. Hey, no worries, Michael. Thanks for joining me. I'll chat to you on Slack. See you next time. Alright, so it's sort of getting a little better. I'll just have to keep the scale kind of large, which makes it look a bit blobby, but it's okay. Low res test. Alright, well, let's go with that. It's, you know, it's not super pretty, but it'll be okay. So this is going to be my surface. Do I have a camera? No, I don't. Just going to jump out. what do we got here? So let's go something like this. Find a good frame. Got my M play I should use. Let's check out that frame. So yeah, maybe even something like that at 180. Ooh, I did kind of choose that. There we go. Something like that might work well. New camera. You know what I'm gonna do here? I'm just gonna quickly write out this to disk because it may very well lose this cache. I'm just storing this in memory. It's risky, you know. I might accidentally do something that clears this cache and then I would have to re-simulate, which would be annoying because it's going to take forever. So I'm just going to write out some of these frames. So got our file cache here. I'm just going to hit save to disk, so change this $OS. And I'm just going to do, I think that's 165 to 1. I'm going to do 189 because I don't think 190 is actually cached out. Call this flip sim v1, save to disk. Looks like it did it instantly, which is cool because it's just reading it straight out of memory. So now I can scrub this and we've got that there. That's great. Set load from file, no geometry, cool. Alright, so we'll go to frame 180, convert VDB. There's our ocean porridge. And got our collider here. I'm going to go to the material context and just create a couple of materials. So principled shader for the boat and whoops, a principled shader for the ocean. The ocean I will just make kind of blue-green, dark color. Got reflection, turn the roughness down. I'm not going to do transparency just yet. The boat will have materials from KitBash, but just for look dev, I'm just going to leave that. I'll just give it a grey shader. Surfacing, I'm going to give the ocean. Hey, look at that. And I'll just give a little environment light here to, let's see, one of these. Just something for lighting. Doesn't have to be crazy. Okay, let's go to mantra. And I'm just going to render the ocean setup, collider and surfacing nodes. Pixel samples to 1, override camera resolution half res. Save. Render view. See what we get. Alrighty. So let's just up the pixel samples a little bit. That lighting is not too crash hot. Okay. Okay. Bit brighter. Let's check out. So yeah, let's have a look at our meshing now. So stop that. And we've got this color we could transfer and utilize, or we have this attribute we could utilize on the shader as well. We also have the Vorticity attribute that we could utilize. So, you know, I could copy this color here and paste it down below. Wait for it, it's doing something. Paste it down below, and you'll see that it's not doing anything because currently we don't have the attributes, so we need to attribute transfer them from the points onto the mesh. So you can see now we're transferring color, or you can see the color, but I'm going to transfer the, oh yeah, I want to transfer velocity, so I need that for motion blur. Transfer the speed, I'm going to transfer vorticity. So you can see I could use the speed value to change the color, so I could actually change the way that this water shades depending on how fast it's going, which is cool. I could do it in here as well and just use the point color, or I could render from that point, go to my material context and actually mess with the shader so that I could change the base color. Here I chose that dark green. I could change that based on speed. So in here, to do that, I could bring in the speed value, run it through a fit, and then pass that into a ramp, and that becomes a color ramp. So I'm going to call this water ramp. Paste it in base color, but before I do that, I'm just going to grab this base color, copy parameter, and paste it on here. Paste values. So now it's going to go between green to white, but I need to give it a range, so let's go back and check out the range that we had on here, 0 to 10. So we could use this to determine what range it should be, but we're not going to render these colors. We're going to render these. So 0 to 10 gets refit to 0 to 1 for the ramp, because that's what it expects. Override the base color. You should see that change. Shading in this way is incredibly powerful because you can just, you know, leverage the information that's on the surface or the points or whatever it is to affect a change. So you can see now already it kind of, you know, is starting to look like a foamy ocean. It's slow res and, you know, we need to tweak some things, but, you know, already that kind of looks better. So I could play with my source min and source max to sort of change the way that this looks. So, you know, if I bring the source min up, it's going to mean that more of the ocean, more of that speed value is going to be the sort of darker value. And I could also change the source max so that it has to go into a higher speed value before it gets really white. And that means I'll get less white overall. And you can see it starts to look like it's foam. I could also go and pull my Vorticity attribute in here and drive Vorticity by that as well. Or instead, you know, you could try and see what works. So Vorticity, you could plug that in and see if that works any better. You can see it's giving different shading options. You could potentially add those two together. You know, use the vorticity and the speed combined. Might have to work out some, you know, some way of unifying those values a little bit so that they work well together. In this case, I think speed is working quite well. So we could also turn on transparency. And when we do that, this water's going to get glassy. So there we go. Very kind of super noisy, but super transparent as well. Now, what could we do? We could, you can see that the transparency sort of goes into these areas, but we could use those attributes potentially to affect that transparency. We could also change the index of refraction maybe to make it slightly slightly more transparent, or more sort of see-through. So the index of refraction sort of will control how much the light bends. If the index of refraction is low, then the light won't bend as much, and you'll get sort of more straight down view, like looking through a pane of glass. But the higher the index of refraction, the more sort of that light will bend, and it will, you know, not allow you to see as straight as you otherwise could. We could manipulate this transparency value by these attributes that we have. So, you know, I don't know. Let's mess around with it and see what we can do. Let's also give it a transmission color. So I'm also going to turn on fake caustics, and that will hopefully stop some of these shadowing. Might make that shadowing look a little better. There we go. Because what's happening when the ship is under the water is shadowing the ship. But without fake caustics turned on, it casts a hard shadow, like there's a hard surface over the top of the ship, and the light is being completely excluded. But enabling fake caustics allows you to basically get transparent shadows, so it gives the effect of something under the water. It's not real caustics, because real caustics is expensive. Fake caustics just sort of, yeah, is a much cheaper and efficient way to do it. So let's also give this transmission tint. I'm going to give it some sort of colour, I don't know, greenish colour. And we'll see if we can get this going. You can see we're getting like reflected light or reflection on our boat. So we could, ooh, look at that, yuck. We could turn down, or just turn off our boat reflections. That will speed up the render as well. There you go. Okay, so our transmission tint is intense. Let's just turn down the value. Hopefully that will make it nice and dark. That nice stormy ocean. Play with that a little bit. There we go. Just trying to get a bit of that kind of bottle green into the water, but I don't want it to be super. Don't want it to be super bright. And I may need to go to my mantra tab. What is it? Shading. Enable absorption and nested dielectrics. Skip that song. Don't know if that doesn't really seem to change much. What am I going to do? I'm also going to change my refract limit and my reflect limit. That should speed things up a little bit as well. So, back to my material. Transmission color at distance. So we could play around with this as well to affect the way that the color is being imparted. So it's sort of the distance that the ray has to travel for that color to take effect. As you can see at point 1, it sort of applies it pretty much straight away, and it completely uses that transmission color. But at a greater distance, the ray has to travel a further distance through that geometry before it completely uses all that value. And as you can see, that's given me back that more glassy look. So you can sort of play with that to affect, you know, the way that that transmission is going to shade. You know, the smaller the number, the darker the depths are going to be. It's quite interesting. But now what we can do is oh, I just noticed my camera went off again. Well, it's happening a lot today. Now what we can do, maybe I'll just leave it as that nice little thinking pose. Let me fix this again. Hey, we're back. So what we could do is change this color based on vorticity, let's say. So we'll go and find what that vorticity value was that I wanted to use. It was sort of 4 to 10 range. Let's take that. put it in the material. So grab my fit, paste it in here, 4 to 10. I'm going to put another color ramp down. I'm going to call this one Vorticity ramp. And I'm going to take that transmission color, copy, paste it here, paste values, and then yeah, so you know it's gonna kind of go through and become clearer. I guess it's not gonna have that green in these parts potentially. So let's find where that goes in. Transmission color, that's it. Plug that in and see what we get. Hey Oko, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. How's your water renders going? Hey MDS Anima, thanks. Glad you like the hat. I'll be going outside after the stream and it's nice and sunny out there. Hey Craig, how are you going? Thanks for joining me. So yeah, I'm not seeing a great deal. I guess I'm seeing it here. We're using Vorticity, so we're using slightly different values to what we had in the speed. We could do this in the speed as well and see how it works with speed. So you can see those areas getting more transparent in those high vorticity areas. But yeah, I'm not seeing a great deal, you know, happening there. Our color isn't really varying much either, so we could kind of go, you know, like this, where we put maybe that color further up and then change the color down here. I'm just going to turn this update off for a second. Yeah, that's good, Craig. Finished for the year. Finished your course for the year, which is good. Are you finished rendering Comp the Chandelier? Oh, cool. Okay, you should send it to me. I'd love to see that. How did it turn out? So, you know, maybe putting another color in here, or maybe, you know, putting a sort of more blue color. You have to kind of mess with it a little bit and do testing, just to see what kind of colors work well. It's feeling a little too glassy at the moment, but part of that is I have nothing under the surface as well. There's just, yeah, it's a very thin band, so it is looking like glass. So yeah, I don't know, you know, it's kind of, this stuff can be very time consuming, but it is worthwhile putting the time in. And you can see there, I added that darker color there, and it has made the whole thing very dark. It looks cool. I like this kind of stormy look, but it's maybe a little much. Let's try the Vorticity again. Ah, cool. Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing the flip sim. I think that'll be really cool. Urko is one of my students who finished earlier this year, and he's been working on some really cool flip sims. So I'm very excited to see the result of those. Always like seeing what everyone comes up with. It's hard, you know, it's hard when you're studying as well to finish things off. Because you're just sort of trying to get through course and learn as much as you can, and you don't really have time to, you know, simulations and rendering just take so much time. So it's often a good chance after you've finished to polish things off and get things ready for your showreel. Hey, good stuff, Craig. So yeah, as you can see, it's kind of getting there, but you know, it's just one of those things that you really need to play with. I guess I could crush this value right down. You might see a little more coming through, and this value, I mean, that's cool. You know, there's some really cool stuff going on here, and I guess ultimately as well, this distance is what's driving it. Yeah, rendering does take is a massive hit. mean, one thing with this render, I'm looking at it, and my eyes are just kind of glazing over because there is no... there's no sort of modeling, what I would describe as modeling, not modeling in the 3D modeling sense, but modeling in the lighting sense. There is nothing kind of helping to pick out the details of this ship, which means that when I'm looking at it, it's just a bit of a mess in terms of, you know, I mean, the pixel samples are low and that doesn't help, but we really need some directional lighting here to help pick out the surfaces and shade those details. And that will really help. But you can see it's starting to get there. I'm getting this nice complexity where I've got the stuff that's spraying out is rendering quite white and transparent. But the stuff around the boat and kind of near, you know, and the ocean surface as a whole, it's got this nice bottle green sort of color. So you can create these really nice variations just by using the data from the simulation, and a speed value is something that I created post-sim, but it's using the velocities. And then the final thing that I could do, I realise I'm over time, I have to go, but the final thing that I could do there as well is to drive the roughness of the reflections and refractions. I have to, with the principal shader, I have to do both at the same time, which I don't love, but I could just drive that value. So if I copy this fit and plug it into the roughness slot, I don't need to use a ramp. But basically what's going to happen here is high vorticity is going to be really rough, low vorticity is not going to be rough at all. And you'll see these areas now shade really kind of foamy-like. See how it's really changed the look of that? So they're rendering really rough now, they're getting a roughness of 1. And it will also change the look of the shading on this as well. It sort of smooths things out, because it smoothed out the reflections, so the reflections are kind of not quite as hot. You know, they're not pinging bright sort of dots anymore. And it makes the foamy areas feel really quite foamy, more diffuse. It's maybe a little much. I mean, the blobbiness of this low-res simulation doesn't help at all, because it just, yeah, it looks blobby. But you can imagine if this was much more detailed and higher resolution, then this actually might not be too bad. I'm not sure about my color choice here. It's kind of a little bit off. But you know, you can see when I crank up the gamma, you can see the variation there. Hey, thanks, Craig. You know, I really appreciate the compliment and the feedback. I try my best to share the information that I have kind of learnt and come up with, and, you know, information that's been shared with me over many years of working in visual effects. And yeah, you know, I'm happy to pass it on to you guys and help everybody get to where I'm at with Houdini, especially because it's a lot of fun. So yeah, you know, this needs work, it needs polish. The white, you know, maybe it doesn't even need to be white, maybe it could have a little bit of blue in it, and I need to sort of balance these shaders and these colors and all this kind of stuff and do a high res sim. I mean, that will transform it completely, and then get some better lighting in there and extend the simulation out, all that kind of stuff. But this is the end of this stream, and I'm gonna keep going with this project. As I mentioned, gonna get some cool animation going, and I'll, you know, refine the simulation and make it work a little better. But this, what you've seen me create over the last 3 streams, is kind of the bones of a really cool setup. I just need to sort of refine it, get the shot worked out, get some animation in there, maybe build a little environment. And when I'm at that point, when I've kind of done some more stuff and I've got some animation, maybe we'll come back and revisit it. But again, I just wanted to thank KitBash for providing me the assets. They're super cool to work with, and I believe the sale is still going. So if you're interested in using this kit, it's December 6th. It might be over now. I'm not sure. It might be tomorrow. It's December 6th here, but not in the US yet. So you might still be in with a chance, but yeah, you know, really good assets to get you a very kind of cool look. So go and check them out if you're interested. And yeah, next week, as I said, so our last stream for the year, Ivan has suggested taking a look at some ghosts. So I'm gonna see what I can come up with. I'll need to find some animation because you know, as we've all seen, I'm no animator. So I'll have to find some animation to drive that. Maybe I could do some cool kind of vellum based motion. But yeah, we'll take a look at some, you know, some interesting ideas. Maybe from the work that I did on Ghostbusters, or, you know, just have fun with some other kind of wacky stuff. The hair stuff, I quite like the idea of doing floaty hair, so that could be cool to look at. But yeah, as always, thank you for joining me. I hope you guys have a great week. And I've been Daniel Hourigan for CG Spectrum. I'm the head of effects, and if you're interested in our courses here, then please, you know, check out the website cgspectrum.com and hit like and subscribe to the videos, and you'll be notified of all the upcoming streams. And take a look at the past streams as well if you're new to the channel. Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good week. I'll see you guys next week.